It's my joy now to introduce to you the president of Williamson College, Dr. Ed Smith.
Good morning, everyone. You did it. And you've heard me say this many times before. But I've said it to some of you, just hang on. Because one of these days you're going to be walking across this platform and getting that piece of parchment. Some of you know what I'm talking about. There were moments where you thought, I'm exhausted, I've got a full-time job, I have a family, can I get up again tomorrow and go back at it and read, write papers, and work my way through this program? And you did it. And so as the Apostle Paul said, endurance produces perseverance. Perseverance produces hope.
It is good to praise the Lord and make music to your name,
Hallelujah.
O Most High.
It's my privilege today to introduce someone that's really good at this. He's lived it out, and he's still living it out. And I'm just so pleased to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Stephen Lynn. He believes in corporations to increase profits when they put values first. It's a philosophy that served him well in his career as a chief executive officer of several major public companies. Steve is currently the founder partner of RP3, a consulting and mergers and acquisitions firm specializing in franchising and chain restaurant businesses. He served as chairman and CEO of Sonic Corporation from 1983 to 1995. During that time, he built a top management team which transformed a struggling company into the nation's largest chain of drive-in restaurants. Steve, my wife thanks you for this. When I asked Kay, where would you like to eat today? Probably 25% of the time she's going to throw out Waffle House, and the others, can we go to Sonic? I'd like a corn dog. I wish I had thought sooner we should have served corn dogs this morning in our breakfast dinner, but maybe later. But Steve and his team acquired the company in a leveraged buyout in 1986, and Sonic has experienced unprecedented same-store sales growth over the following 20 years. So what you see from Sonic today, you can thank Steve Lynn because they were the ones that transformed that company. Professionally, Steve was inducted into the Oklahoma Commerce and Industry Hall of Fame in the early 2000s, and Sonic was selected as a top 100 franchise under his direction. He received his BS in Industrial Engineering from Tennessee Tech University, and, okay, Steve, this is a hard one for me, an MBA from the University of Louisville. Now, this was a risk. You know, one of my degrees is from the University of Kentucky. Steve's got one of his degrees from the University of Louisville, and if you know anything about Kentucky basketball, it's fierce competition and they're bitter rivals. But I invited him anyway. And I did a little bit of research. Out of the 55 times that Kentucky and Louisville played one another, Kentucky's won 38 of those. So I just want a little bit of news. Okay. He serves on the board. He's a board member and trustee for the Tennessee Tech University Foundation, National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, LaGrange College, the Country Music Hall of Fame, and here's another one of my favorites, Krispy Kreme Corporation. He's an alumnus of Leadership Nashville. Steve, I welcome you to the platform today. Please Before you share, we have a special presentation. We have an honorary degree of a doctorate in humanities that we're going to present to Steve Lynn today. The citation says, candidate for the degree, Doctor of Humanities honoris causa, in gratitude to God for distinguished service to the people of his community, state, and nation, and for his enthusiastic support of Williamson College, and in recognition of his exemplary leadership in professional life with over 40 years of service, always standing for ethical practices as evidenced by his leadership role at several major corporations and many other instances of selfless service to people across worthy organizations. The Board of Trustees of Williamson College, upon recommendation of the President and endorsement by the executive faculty, confers upon C. Stephen Lynn, the Doctor of Humanities honoris causa, on the occasion of the commencement exercises at Franklin, Tennessee, the 19th day of May, 2023.
Good morning. Good morning. Am I live? When I woke up this morning, I was thinking about these precious young leaders to be. We all know they're the star of this show, not anybody on the stage at the moment. But it also occurred to me that everyone in here has played a role, validating, praying for, nurturing, whether you're faculty, staff, board, parent, grandparent, sibling. So this is graduation day for everybody in here. So I congratulate you all on this graduation day. Can't not go where I'm about to go, even though it has nothing to do with today. My number one lady, Mila, M-I-L-A-H, and I celebrated a few months back our 46th. I think Alan Jackson said it best when he wrote, thank you, Lord, for a good woman that'll put up with an imperfect work in process man. But in any case, the week before we celebrated our 46th, our daughter Whitney and her husband Forrest, whom we think hung the moon, presented us with our first grandchild, little Caroline Grace. So apologies, but I can't keep that in. First time I met her, she was 3 days old. I had her little butt in my right hand, and Mila was over feeding some lunch to Forrest and Whitney, and I said to her parents, I said, you know, if she had been butt ugly, she would have had all my heart. But she's so beautiful, she takes my breath away. I have a little poem that says, you're not a winner because you've won or because you're getting ready to, because God put winning in your soul the day that He created you. You're special because you're made that way, not because you've sung your song. See, winning's just your witness of what's been in you all along. A winner's simply using what they've got, and they understand what life is all about. See, everybody's made to win, and those that do are those that see that we all come fully loaded with this power that sets us free. So when you win, don't try to prove you have something that I lack. You've just been using what you've got to pay a little interest back. Winners, leaders, successful leadership. What makes most of those folks different than most of the rest of us? Well, in the quality time you are blessing me with this morning, I'm going to share some of my own life journey, candidly, transparently, not looking for your praise or your pity, but merely looking to frame a few simple points about successful leadership. For almost as far back as I can remember, I've been running as hard as I could to get off the side of the tracks that I grew up on in a little southwestern Georgia cotton mill town over to your side of the tracks. For almost as far back as I can remember, I've wanted to be president of a company. Not because I knew all that that meant. I certainly didn't know what it was going to do to my hairline or my waistline. But through divine providence, the mentors that God brought into my life were the owners and presidents of some of the companies in my small town, and I just wanted to be like them. So driven, got out of that poverty by going to college on a full ride in athletics, and as you heard, engineering undergraduate, MBA. First in my family to go to high school. Let me share a thought or two about my broader family. I was the oldest, all by the same parents. I have a sister who's 2 years younger, who got to high school. I have a brother who is 11 years younger, who got to the 9th grade, and a sister who's 21 years younger, who got pregnant in the 8th grade and got to the 8th grade. And they all raised their families in the kind of poverty that I grew up in, and in some cases maybe worse. And through my life, through our love, guilt feelings about God blessing us and not blessing them, we created a within our family welfare system that doesn't work in our nation, doesn't work in families, robs dignity, entraps, makes people feel beholden. So along the way, through some good Christian counseling, for me, not for them, we started focusing on their children. Now this is going to sound very harsh, but we started focusing on their educatable children, feeling that without education, there are no marketable skills, and without marketable skills, there's no hope. But we did not focus on investing in those that we didn't perceive to be educatable. I know that sounds harsh. And my sister loves both of her sons equally, but one's just getting out of prison for the second time, and the other and his wife are PhD professors at a Southern college. I think he would say, I'm not bragging about this, but I think he would say I have been the most influential person in his life. And thank you, Lord, for that opportunity. More of a blessing to me than to him. So, this brings me to the first point about successful leadership that I came to share. President Smith kind of touched on this, kind of implied this. When I finished my MBA, I can remember going, "Phew, it's over. I never have to do this again." Well, thank goodness I was wrong. Thank goodness I was wrong. Learning is what makes today different than yesterday and tomorrow different than today. So, if you're going to be the leaders you were made to be, You need to look at life as a continuous education and be a student of everything and keep balance in the 7 compartments of life. Work. We're brainwashed in this country to think workaholics win the day. Well, the truth is workaholics do win the day, but life isn't a 100-yard dash, it's a marathon. Being a spouse, one of the great joys of my life. Being a parent, one of the great joys of my life. Social. God created us for other people. He created us to enjoy people, to be a social animal. The aesthetic part of life. God created beauty, intimacy, and adventure for us to enjoy to the fullest, but within certain boundaries. Health. We all have friends, even in your youth, leaders to be. We all have friends that have spent their health getting wealth, and now would give all their wealth to get their health back, but it's too late. And then the spiritual, the underpinnings, the foundation. So you will not be all that you were packaged to be. And you won't enjoy it near as much if you don't view life as a continuous education. Be a student of everything. Keep balance in the 7 compartments of your life. Grew up driven, as I've already said, wanting to be president of a company. Became president of a company for the first time at 30. Got married to my precious lady at 29. And we moved to Southern California, where I became CEO of a multi-million-dollar marketing company. An event happened one day, which may not seem like a big deal to you, but it was huge to me and life-changing. And Milo was the instrument of that shaking. It was like being grabbed by the shoulders, and figuratively, it caused me to slow down and think about life. She asked me one day in the foyer of that nice California house we had. By the way, we had a nice California house, wife, pool, sheepdog, and Mercedes. We had some of what the great American dream was all about. But living in California, to be able to afford that, you had pretty good commutes to your office, as I did. So she asked me one day, Daddy, and she called me Daddy forever, and I called her Mom, before we ever had our 2 kids. Josh, I didn't mention, so I better mention him. Whitney, married at 37, and Josh, 35, unmarried, so any eligible ones in here see Mila after. So, Mila asked me, Dad, what are the most important things in your life? And I said, power, recognition, and money. There was an immediate look of significant pain on her face. And I'm kind of fast on my feet. I knew what I'd done. I said, oh, darling, it goes without saying that you're number one. But she knew I told her the truth. And I knew that she knew, and she knew that I knew that she knew. So, as I would drive to work each day and home each day, I began to think about the pain that I had seen on her face, the pain that I had inflicted. I thought about my wedding vows, those significant words of commitment that some in here have said. And I realized they meant absolutely nothing to me. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I was scared. I was trying to get through that ordeal and a honeymoon in life. I wasn't thinking about those words. I didn't make a commitment. So one day, all by myself driving to work, I made a commitment that she was the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Unconditional commitment. Changed everything. Simple deal, but it changed everything. Like, externally, I'm low-key, laid-back, Southern gentleman kind of personality, but internally, hard-driven, competitive, and when we had disagreements, as any partnership does, I won them all. That was my nature. I just endured until she would give up. But if I'm going to spend the rest of my life with her, that doesn't work. It has to be reasonable, middle ground, win-win kind of situation. I was a faithful husband, had been. But if I'm making this unconditional commitment to spend the rest of my life with her, I've got to build in safeguards about tempting situations, don't I? I mean, if Billy Graham won't get on an elevator up until his death, wouldn't get on an elevator with a woman by himself, well, I sure as heck don't need to be going to a convention by myself with my marketing vice president, who was a pretty female. I have to build in safeguards there, but for the grace of God, go any of us. So as I reflected on this unconditional commitment, you know what I realized? I realized it was the first time in my life that I'd ever made a commitment to anything or anyone that didn't have right at the center of it that question, what's in this for me? And I think it was a necessary first step for a poor background, self-centered, ambitious jock like me to begin to understand what a personal relationship and faith in Jesus could be. Hadn't grown up in a spiritual home. Milo was an in-the-closet Christian in a Christian church, the first Christian church we got married in. I love that they have communion every Sunday. But through her prodding, we began to go to a large Presbyterian church in our neighborhood in Southern California. Trinity United Presbyterian Church in Tustin, Santa Ana area. I think just into Tustin. And I found it real boring. I didn't know when to sing all 4 verses of the first and third. I didn't know when to stand up, when to sit down. I hadn't grown up in any of that. But in a big church like that, there are big Sunday school classes. And we began to go to a young couples class, some with kids, some not. And it was 100 or so people, and it was being taught by recently retired medical missionaries to Africa. And they were just spectacular. Extraordinary husband and wife. And so I was finding that interesting. A tall, good-looking 6'7" basketball type who was full-time on staff with Campus Crusade. And those of you who, everybody's heard of Campus Crusade, but it's really 100+ ministries, not just the campus-based, a college campus-based ministry. Athletes in Action, Josh McDowell's ministry, etc. So this guy was in charge of Here's Life, Orange County. Here's Life was a ministry that they had. So he began to visit me. We played basketball against each other. I was surprised that he would try to kick my butt just like I was trying to kick his, and elbow me and do all the things I was doing to him. And I thought Christians were wusses. I decided somewhere along the way, early on, to prove to him and to me that Jesus didn't exist. And, you know, anytime we get somebody serious about that, Jesus wins every time. So we met for a whole year, and I'd ask questions like, how can a God of love let my friend's mother suffer with cancer for 3 years? So as the year wore on, I didn't get all my questions answered, but I had a change of perspective. And one day driving to work again, all by myself, I said a simple, inadequate, naive prayer and asked Jesus to take control of my life. When I said that simple, inadequate, naive prayer, I didn't feel any different. I didn't hear any voices. I didn't see any lights shine in. But as days and weeks and months went by, my life changed from the inside out. What was the promise that Jesus made to me? Not that it's all downhill, it's a piece of cake from here on in. That's not the promise. The promise is, I will be there. In victories, I'll be there. In bumps in the road, I will be right beside you. So, that company that I was CEO of, that I was so proud of, and got so much identity from what was on my business card, the parent company sold. This was just a few weeks after I became a born again believer. And so the parent company sold. A representative of the new owners called me into his office one day. We met for about an hour and a half. I don't remember all that he said to me, but I distinctly remember him saying, "You're fired." 2 weeks after that, Mila and I got a call at that California house from my brother-in-law to tell me that my father, who had been a serious alcoholic since I was about 12, had shot and killed himself. As I say that, I see some grimaces. I didn't say that to offend anyone or embarrass anyone. I mean, the truth is, if we went around the room, even as young as these precious leaders to be are, there's none of us that wouldn't have to share as part of our life's journey some bumps in the road. As Judas Urst would say, some terrible, awful, no good, very bad days, even in Australia. Another guy from that Sunday school class, not the 6'7" guy, but another friend from that class who had been instrumental in being a part of Jesus using to lead me to personal relationship and faith in him, called when he heard about my pop shooting and killing himself. He called to share his condolences. And he shared with me Romans 8:28. A mysterious, unconditional promise from God that no matter what I'm going through, he's using that to mold me into the man he wants me to be and to bless me. It didn't make me feel any better. It didn't make me feel any better. But you know what it did say to me? It said, there's an end to the pain. It said, there's an end to the pain. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. The human spirit can endure unbelievable things, can overcome unbelievable hardships if there's an end to the pain, if there's a light at the end of the tunnel. If there's not, we're exhausted and impotent. In a secular sense, what have we said to these precious folks when they entered high school, let's say? Study hard, do well, and one day you may graduate from college. Nobody ever graduated. Not only do we say, this deal ends each year, we kind of say it ends each quarter, and there will never be a moment that you don't know exactly where you are and how far you've got to go. So, point 2 I came to share with you, leaders to be, is I wish we could all put our hands on each other and pray, and there would never be another bump in the road for you. But there are going to be terrible, awful, no good, very bad days. And unless you have something in your spirit that tells you, I can get through this, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, there's an end to the pain, unless you have that, you will not be all God made you to be. I did get reemployed, as you have heard, and heard more than you probably wanted to hear, but West Coast chain of theme restaurants. Did that for about 4 years. Along the way, this happened to be a Campus Crusade retreat. Mila and I went on a 5-day business leaders retreat for a test program by Dennis Rainey that became the Family Life Ministry under the Campus Crusade umbrella. And while we were there, we met one of Sonic's largest franchisees and his wife. They took a liking to us, probably took a liking to Mila, if truth were known. And they studied with us, walked with us, ate with us. And as the 5 days went by, they invited us to come visit them at their home in Oklahoma City, which is where their business was headquartered. It also was where Sonic Corp was headquartered. And both Mila and I are from small towns in Georgia, so at Christmas time, after Christmas, we would fly back to Atlanta and go visit her family and visit my family a little bit. And so we stopped off in Oklahoma City on the way home that year and had a nice long weekend with this largest of Sonic's franchise operators. So as that week wore on, I'm not sure why. It had to be a God thing. By the way, you know what a coincidence is? A coincidence is when Jesus chooses to remain anonymous. Don't you see? So we stopped off in Oklahoma City and had this wonderful visit. As the long weekend wore on, this gentleman, this leader in Sonic, said, "Well, what would you do if you were the president of Sonic?" Frankly, while I'd spent most of my career in that industry and in franchising, ran the U.S. for Kentucky Fried Chicken on the supply chain side and learned all I know about franchising from them, I'd never heard of Sonic. And it wasn't like today where you just go online, and you can learn all you ever want to know. But so I think you're the first I've ever confessed this to. I just said to him, let me not be flippant. Let me go back and think about this, and I will send you something within a week. So I sent him a 9-page outline of a business plan a week later after I'd done some studying. I've got a copy of it. It looks like you guys wouldn't know what sepia paper is, but a few in here would. It looks like a faded old piece of sepia paper, these 9 sheets. So I sent that to him, and it was remarkably similar to what we did when I took over for the founder. I had no reason to get it right, so it was a God thing. It was one of those coincidences. So he invited us back to Oklahoma City, and I met the founder. And when the founder retired about a year later, I was brought in to take his place. I was 36, had no credentials really to run that big chain, that big brand, and certainly had no idea that it was going out of business. We had almost 2,000 units. We had no stores advertising together, no stores purchasing together. 4 straight years of sales decline. Sales had dipped below 200 million. We made 58,000 a year before I arrived. We owned and operated about 150 company-owned stores. The rest were franchised. 90+% were franchised. The company stores were losing $1.5 million a year. Less than 10% of the chain had cash registers, old, weary, 50-style drive-in car hop kind of business. And we weren't getting out of the back end of POS machines, the purchasing, marketing, and management data that you needed to make good decisions. So that's where we were. Turnarounds are a we thing, not a me thing. I happened to put the plan together, but God put it together through me. But there were 15,000, 16,000 people working real hard to bring it back to life. And over the 12 years we were there and the team that I put together as a follow-on, we went from average store sales of 210 to $1.2 million. We went from almost 2,000 units to over 4,000. We went from sales of 200 million to 4+ billion. Went from a market value of 10 million to 2.3 billion, etc. Success Magazine, in their annual listing of the top 100 franchise opportunities in the world, chose Sonic #1 the last 2 years I was there. So a nice turnaround. In the world's eyes, most would say that was an enormous success. Because of the way God blessed us there, Mile and I were brought to Nashville, back to the deep South where we grew up. You know, the late Louis Grizzard says, I'm an American by the accident of birth. I'm a Southerner about the grace of God. So there's something about this being a Southerner, being a part of that club, that pulls you back. So that was one of the reasons we came back. And it was another turnaround. Shoney's, Captain D's, Mrs. Winter's, Micro Salad Dressing, multi-billion-dollar wholesale food distribution company, and some smaller brands. So we came back to take that on and sold out of Sonic and moved on from there with gratitude. That happened because of the way God blessed us in Oklahoma City. So I put together a good team, good plan. We started working it. And we moved the needle a little, but it went slower than I expected. And along the way, the two co-founding families still owned, not majority of the then public company, but they owned a substantial minority interest. And the oldest son of one of the co-founders was a gifted restaurateur in creating and in running, but upscale. Not family dining, upscale, and he had never run anything more than about 40 units. But he was impatient about this, embarrassed about where the brands were, and he began a proxy battle to regain control of the company. A proxy battle means buy the company without money, using the shareholders' money. And along the way during that proxy battle, we settled that, and for boring reasons I won't get into, I departed the company about a year later. And we chose to stay here because our kids were in middle school and we didn't want to bounce them around high schools. And we said we'll be here until we're at least empty nesters. By that time we were rooted in lots of people we love here and the beauty of this part of the world, etc., and all the things that we know. What I just described, most of the world would look at and say, well, that was a miserable failure. Even though in my heart of hearts, I know that I did my best work there. And even though in my heart of hearts, I know it was the most fun I ever had in my career. Not fun for the Mile and the kids. A proxy battle is like running for president of the United States in a smaller scale. So I share all of that to make my third point. And I think the most important point about successful leadership. Don't we put people that we perceive to be successful on a pedestal and say, well, it's a series of victory dances. They don't get scared like I do. They don't mess up like I do. They don't have morning breath like I do. Well, I'm here to proclaim that that's just not true. We have to look at failure differently. It's a search for success. It's an unpleasant good. I learn more from my failures, so-called failures, than I do from my successes. So-called successes. So we have to think of successful leadership as an unpleasant good. We have to think of it as failing forward. Knock down, get up, dust yourself off, keep going. To think otherwise would be to think that LeBron James, Michael Jordan could do all those wonderful things with a basketball the first time they ever picked it up. It's just not true. The only great athletes were miserable failures who didn't give up. The only great fathers were miserable failures that never gave up. I'm going to ask Jesus when we get face to face, why wasn't there some kind of learning manual to this parenting thing? And we were all rookies at it. The only successful leaders are miserable failures who didn't give up, failing forward. Let me summarize all of that and get out of your way with another little poem that says, it's not how much I got her made or where my name's engraved, because there sits no jury in my game, no judge to see my fame. The tally sheet that adds me up will slowly spell my name. And after that, just one thought more, a question will be posed. How deeply did he share his life and cause this world to grow? Did this man love? Did this man share? Did this man dare to care? Everybody in here but Mila and me, this is a graduation day for them. But we're so grateful you've allowed us to have a little equity in the leaders you're going to become. God bless you. Thank you. Congratulations.